Masechet Zevaḥim, Daf Lamed Daled. We are in the middle of talking about Resh Lakish and what he derives from this pasuk. It's in Parashat Tazria regarding a woman who recently gave birth. It says Bechol Kodesh lo tiga, and continues Ve'el Hamikdash lo tavo. So from this part of it, that she should not touch any sacrificial food, Resh Lakish already learned two things. Number one, it's a prohibition against someone tameh touching a sacrificial food. And since it's a law ta'aseh, they would get lashes if they do that. In addition, we also learn from this that this is azhara la'ochel, that if someone eats sacrificial food while he is tameh, then he gets karet. And you learn both of these things because it says the word tiga, so that literally means touching. So that's how we learn the touching prohibition. But since it comes right before El Mikdash Lo Tavo, and they're connected, and coming into the Mikdash while tameh is karet, therefore there must be another prohibition that has to do with karet, and that would be eating sacrificial food while tameh. Okay, now we ask a further question about Resh Lakish and this pasuk. V'akate mi ba'ele letameh shachal basar kodesh lifnei zirika. Beforehand, when we spoke about eating sacrificial food while tameh, that was after zirika. After zirika, after the kohen did all the rites that they have to for a korban, if it's tahor, then the people can eat it. If it's a korban hatat, then the kohanim can eat it. If it's a shilamim, then anybody can eat it while they are tahor. So zirika permits it to be eaten. If one eats it, it permits it to be eaten while tahor. If one eats it while tameh, then that would be prohibited and would get karet. What about eating it before zirika? So before zirika, there's a basic prohibition against eating it. That prohibition, however, does not have karet. So Resh Lakish says that furthermore, someone who's tameh that eats basar kodesh lifnei zirika, we learn a prohibition from this pasuk. Di'itmar tameh shachal basar kodesh lifnei zirika. Resh Lakish amar lokeh, v'Rabbi Yochanan amar eno lokeh. So everybody agrees that it's prohibited. It's prohibited to eat it at all before zirika, even if you're tahor. But what if you're tameh? Does that make it even worse? Resh Lakish says it makes it even worse, and one would get lashes for that. Rabbi Yochanan, however, says no, you do not get lashes. What is the derivation? Resh Lakish amar lokeh bechol kodesh lo tiga. Quotes the same pasuk that we just had. We already learned two things from it, and now he's learning something else from it. So how could he learn those two things? Don't we need it for this law that one gets lashes for eating basar kodesh before zirika while tameh, lashana lifnei zirika, v'lashana la'achar zirika. Resh Lakish says, since it says bechol, that means anytime, both before zirika and after zirika. Rabbi Yochanan amar eno lokeh kedetane bardela atya tum'ato v'chi kata bahu la'achar zirika. Rabbi Yochanan says he does not get lashes because we have that baraita from Bardela who said, we already cited it yesterday, tum'ato. It's from this pasuk here in Parashat Tzav. It says, "Anefesh asher tochal basar mizebach hashelamim shel Adonai vetumato alav." So that's the word vetumato. A person who eats flesh from a korban shelamim while he is tameh v'nichreta nefeshahi me'ameha. So he will get karet. And so it says tumato there, and it says tuma also, same word regarding someone who enters into the Bet HaMikdash while he is tameh. And so from that gezer hashava, we learn, just like over there, there's already a warning and a prohibition, and so too here, there's a warning and prohibition regarding someone who's tameh, who eats sacrificial food. But this pasuk is talking about after zirika only, and therefore only after zirika will there be such a punishment, but before zirika, no punishment for eating it tameh. So that's the reason why Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. So now we're back to Resh Lakish. How could he learn another thing from the same pasuk? And the answer is Imken lemakera bekodesh, my bechol kodesh shema mina tarteh. Because if he was only learning the two things that we learned above, that he could learn just from the word kodesh. The word bechol is an extra word. That's his derivation. Actually, is kind of explicit right here. Bechol kodesh otiga. Since it says bechol kodesh, we learned it doesn't matter whether it's before or after zirika. He's going to get malkut. Gufa. Now let's analyze this machloket further. Again, someone who's tameh, who eats sacrificial food before zirika. He's not allowed to eat anyway, but now he makes it even worse by eating it while tameh. Resh Lakish says he gets malkut, Yochanan says he does not. Amar Abaye, machloket betumat haguf about betumat basar, dibrei hakol lokeh. Abaye says this controversy is only when the person who is eating it is tameh. But if let's say the food itself, the sacrificial meat, becomes tameh, everybody would agree that he gets malkut for eating it, even if the person is tahor. That's a different prohibition of a tahor person eating sacrificial food that is tameh before zirika. Damar kera vehabasar lerabot esim ulbona dela bene achila ninhu ve'afilu achi rabinu kera. And what is Rabbaye's proof? Well, it's from the pasuk before the one that we just read. That was 20, and 19 talks about habasar, flesh, ashediga bechol tameh, that the sacrificial flesh touched something that's tameh. So now the sacrificial food is tameh. It should not be eaten. Do not eat it. Ba'esh yisref has to be burnt. Vehabasar kol tahor yochal ba. There's an extra word vehabasar here. You could have just said kol tahor yochal ba. A tahor person can eat it. What's this extra word vehabasar? So the Midrash says vehabasar is coming to include even wood and frankincense, which are not edible items. People don't eat wood, coals, ashes, or livona. Nevertheless, the word basar comes to include them, that if they became consecrated in a holy vessel and someone eats them, and the thing is, and it is tameh, if those items become, first of all, you learn that they become tameh, which is itself a chidush, because these are not vessels and they're not food. So generally something that's not a vessel, not food, can even become tameh. But the word basar teaches, number one, that they can become tameh, and that someone who eats it is liable to lashes. And so, since this is a pasuk, and everybody agrees with this pasuk, therefore there's no machloket. The machloket is only about the person eating it before zirika while tameh, but if the food itself is tameh, everybody agrees that there are lashes. That's Abaye's opinion. Rava Amar machloket betumat haguf, aval betumat basar dibrei kol eno lokeh. Rava has the opposite interpretation. He says that machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish, as we said, is only talking about when the person is tameh and he eats the sacrificial food before zirika. There, Resh Lakish says you get malkut. Rabbi Yochanan says he does not. However, if the sacrificial food itself it becomes tameh, everybody agrees there is no malkut. What's the source? My ta'ama, kevan de la karina be v'tumato ala v'nichreta la karina be v'habasar asheriga bechol tameh lo yacher. The source is from these two pesukim here that we already cited. The second pasuk, which is talking about a person who's tameh and says he gets karet, well, he gets karet only after the sprinkling of the blood. And if the person is tameh and he eats sacrificial food after the sprinkling of the blood, then he gets karet. But before the sprinkling of the blood, this pasuk does not apply. He does not get karet. So just like that's true, so to pasuk 19, which is talking about the sacrificial food becoming tameh, this prohibition only applies after the sprinkling of the blood. But before the sprinkling of the blood, there would be no lashes. And so everybody agrees with this pasuk, and therefore everybody would say there's no lashes for that. Wait a second. But what about that midrash that we cited before, that when it says the extra word v'habasar over here, that's coming to include even the wood and the frankincense that is prohibited to eat if it becomes tameh. And so if that's prohibited, all the more so one should get lashes if one eats the sacrificial food, which is an edible item. And the answer is, no, here we're dealing with a case where the wood or the frankincense became sanctified in a holy vessel. It was placed in a holy vessel, and once it's placed in a holy vessel, it's the same as sacrificial meat where you sprinkled the blood. blood. In other words, you did all the things that you have to do to now make it permitted. So if it's sacrificial meat, well, in order to make that permitted to then eat or to put the rest on the mizbeach or for the people to eat, you have to go and sprinkle the blood. That's true if you're talking about meat. But if you're talking about wood or ashes, then just putting it in the kli is sufficient. Ditnan, kol sheyesh lo matirin mishekarbu matirav, kol she'eno matirin mishekadash bakeli, as we learned in Mishnah Masechet Me'ila. Anything that has steps to perform in order for it to be mutar, permitted to eat, so then only once you sacrifice all those matirim, and meaning you take the blood and you do the sprinkling of the blood, only then will it become edible. However, something that has no matirim, like wood and frankincense, there's no blood of it that you have to do anything. So when does it become sanctified? Only once you put it into a vessel. Therefore, this word basar that comes to say, oh, you're going to get lashes for eating the frankincense and the wood while it is tameh, that's only after it was placed in a holy vessel. And the parallel to that is eating sacrificial meat after zirika. And it's tameh, yes, then in fact, one is prohibited and one would get lashes. That's the parallel to it. But before it's placed into a holy vessel, then one would not get lashes. And the parallel to that would be meat before zirika is the same as that. You didn't have all the matirin, and therefore there would be no lashes, and everybody would agree with that. Itmar, hama'ale evre behema temea al gabe hamizbeach. Resh Lakish amar loke, Rabbi Yochanan amar eno loke. If someone puts pieces of non-kosher animals on the mizbeach, Resh Lakish says he gets lashes. Rabbi Yochanan says he does not get lashes. Resh Lakish amar loke tehora'in temea la. Resh Lakish says he deserves to get malkut because the pasuk in the beginning, very beginning of Vayikra, says, go tell Bnei Israel, Adam ki yakri mikem korban laHashem. If someone wants to bring a korban, min habehema, min habakar, umin hason, takribu et korbanchem. If it's going to be a behema, here as opposed to if it's going to be a bird or a meal offering, which is going to come later. So if you're going to bring a behema, then you should bring it from either bakar or son. Bakar would be a large animal, like a cow, an ox. A son would be a small animal, like sheep and goats. So those are the types that one can bring. Those are kosher animals. And so we learn from here that it has to be a kosher. Tehorah here means kosher. Temeah doesn't mean tameh as ritually impure. It means non-kosher, as the Torah itself calls them tahor and tameh. And this is a la velava ba mikilal aseh lokin alav. This now is a positive commandment that says when you're going to bring korban, bring these. But we can infer, you should bring these kosher animals, but not non-kosher animals. And according to Resh Lakish, when we have a lo ta'aseh that is derived from an aseh, one does get lashes. Just like if the Torah said, do not bring non-kosher animals, you'd get lashes. Even though here it doesn't say do not bring, but I can infer it from says bring this, that means don't bring the other, that one gets lashes. Rabbi Yochanan says, although it's prohibited, there is no lashes here because this is a negative commandment that derives from an aseh, and in general, anytime you have a negative commandment that is not a standalone, but rather only derives from an aseh, although it's a negative commandment, you're not allowed to bring it, but you don't get lashes for it, and therefore you do not get lashes for bringing a non-kosher animal onto the mizbeach. Motib Rabbi Yirmiyah, Ota tochelu velo behema temea velava ba mikelal aseh aseh. Rabbi Yirmiyah challenges Resh Lakish's principle that lava ba mikelal aseh you would get malkut. That's not true because it says in Vayikra chapter 11 when it lists all the animals that are kosher, have these kosher signs. It says Ota tochelu, these that have a cloven foot and choose the cud. Ota tochelu, those you can eat, and we can infer from this, and not if it's missing those one or two of those signs, then it's prohibited. Now, this is a lava ba miklal aseh, and yet it's only an aseh. We do not learn from here that one would get lashes. We do learn that you get lashes for a non-kosher animal from different pasuk that says, these animals that have only one sign, like a camel and a pig, there it says, do not eat those. So if if you can't eat something that has only one sign, certainly you cannot eat something that has no signs. And that is a lo ta'aseh, that's a direct lo ta'aseh. That's how we learned that you would get lashes for eating non-kosher animals. But we don't learn, you need a pasuk, a separate pasuk. You do not learn it from here. If you could learn it from the aseh, you wouldn't need the lo ta'aseh. So the fact that there is a lo ta'aseh means that the aseh is separate. And so in general, an aseh is simply a positive commandment, and even a lo ta'aseh that you might be able to derive from an aseh, it only tells you it's prohibited, but there would not be lashes unless you have another pasuk. And therefore, it is a challenge to Resh Lakish, who says lokeh, but there's no negative, a direct negative commandment about this. Amar leRabbi Yaakov leRabbi Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, asber alach be'ebre behema temea de kol ha'amala pelige, ki pelige bechaya. And so Rabbi Yaakov told Bimiyah bar Tachlifa, let me explain to you the machlok between Yochanan and Shakish. In fact, they were not arguing about putting onto the mizbeach limbs of a non-kosher animal. In that case, everybody agrees that there would not be lashes, because as we just said, it's a mitzvah aseh to put a kosher animal onto the mizbeach, and we can derive a lo ta'aseh, but there's no lashes for that. So everybody agrees, no lashes for putting a non-kosher animal on the mizbeach. What is the argument? They're arguing about a chaya, like a deer, which is a kosher animal. Person can eat a deer. You do shechita, you can eat deer, but cannot be sacrificed. And so this is what we're saying. Rabbi Yochanan amar over ba'aseh, Resh Lakish amar eno over be'velo kelum. Rabbi Yochanan says, if you sacrifice a deer, put it on the mizbeach, you're violating an aseh. And Resh Lakish said, actually, there's no transgression at all. Rabbi Yochanan amar over ba'aseh behema'in hayala. Rabbi Yochanan says, you're violating a mitzvah taseh, because look, the pasuk says if you're going to bring a behema, here's what you should bring, and it tells you it's going to be from cattle or sheep. So those are the animals that you can bring. Behema, a domesticated animal, yes, and haya, an undomesticated animal like a deer, you cannot bring. So if you do bring it, you're violating a mitzvah taseh. No lashes, but it's violating mitzvah taseh. Resh Lakish says, Omer eno oved alav be'velo chelum hahula mitzvah. Resh Lakish says, no, I read this pasuk as telling you it's a mitzvah. If you're going to bring a korban and you want to make a mitzvah to bring the korban, bring it from bakar and son. Then you fulfill a mitzvah. You brought a korban olah, beautiful, wonderful mitzvah you did. If you bring it from a deer, then you don't fulfill a mitzvah. It's like nothing. There's no violation either. There's no prohibition. It's doing it. It's like nothing. It's like putting air on the mizbeach. So there's no violation, although you just don't fulfill a mitzvah. And so that's how Resh Lakish reads the pasuk. However, motiv Rava is going to challenge Resh Lakish about this reading. Ilu ne'emar korban Hashem behema, hayiti omer haya bechlal behema. Kinyan shene'emar zot behema asher tochelu shor se kibasim v'se izim ayal usebi vegomer. Rava says, if the pasuk said that someone who brings a korban Hashem behema, period, I could have read that as including chaya. The word behema has really two meanings, two dictionary meanings. It can mean specifically a domesticated animal like sheep and cows, or behema has a second meaning that is any land animals. And you see the second meaning, the more expansive meaning, in this pasuk that says chaya, that says these are the behemot that you can eat. And it lists shor se kebasim v'se'izim, domesticated animals, and then it says ayal usbi. It also mentions deer and gazelle, which are not domesticated. It's within the category of behema, and behema as in the expanded definition. So I could have said that if the Torah only said korban Hashem behema, maybe anything that's included in behema can be sacrificed, any kosher animal, including a deer. Talmud Omar bakar v'son amarti lecha velo chaya. But the pasuk continues and says, specifically mina bakar umina son, meaning it has to be a domesticated animal and not a chaya. So therefore, one is certainly, and everybody agrees, that bringing a deer is not going to be a fulfillment of a mitzvah. That you're going to pray, I'm going to bring a korban olah of a deer. Do I get a mitzvah? No, that's for sure. Now, here's the clincher of the argument of Rava. Yachol lo yavi vim hevi kasher. Now, you might think, all right, you shouldn't bring it, lechatechila. But if you did bring it, it's still kosher, it's still valid, and you didn't do anything wrong. Maybe it's even a positive, although it's not like you have to. Ha lema ze domeh letamid shamar lo rabo habeli chitim v'habelo chitim usorim sheno kema'abir al devarav edla kemosif al devarav v'kasher. And in that sense, it might be like a mashal of someone. A student whose teacher told him. His teacher says, "Student, go and get me some wheat." And then the student goes and brings wheat and barley. He doesn't violate his words because he brought wheat, but he's adding, "Oh, I brought something extra. I know you only asked for wheat, but I'm going to bring you wheat and barley." So that'll be the same here. Hashem says in the pasuk, "Bring from the cattle, bring from these domesticated animals." If a person would go and bring domesticated and also bring a deer. All right, so you added something. You didn't take away. There's no violation. That's what you might think. Talmud lomar bakar v'son amarti lecha v'lo chaya. So, but therefore, if you just had the word behema, okay, you couldn't say, yeah, okay, chayot are also included, and fine, lecha techila, don't bring them. But if you did, okay, fine, it's an extra credit. Why not? That's why the pasuk comes and says, "Bakar and son, halam hazeh domeh, letamid shamar lo rabo, al tavi li ela chitin, ve'bi lo chitin usorim, sheno kemosif al devarav ela kema'abir al devarav upasul." Rather, this is similar to a teacher who told his student, "Do not only bring me chitin. I don't want anything else. Do not bring me anything else, only chitin." And then the student goes and brings wheat and barley. In that case, you don't say that he's adding to it, but rather he's violating it. Teacher said, I said only wheat, and you brought me barley also. You violated what I said. That's the same as this. And so therefore, tiyubta Resh Lakish tiyubta. This is a conclusive refutation of Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish said there's no problem to bring a chaya. So there's no violation at all. Not true. You see, from this baraita says that it is a violation. And even though, yes, okay, we're also bringing domesticated animals, but the Torah says specifically, only bring domesticated animals. That's what it means when it says behema. Don't think, any behema in the expansive definition. No, bakar, son. That's what I want, and that's the only thing I want, and not deer. Therefore, if you bring deer, you're not just adding, you're actually going against the commandment, and so that's a disproof against Resh Lakish, a proof for Rabbi Yochanan that there is in fact a violation of this mitzvah if you bring a deer on the Mizbeach. Back to the Mishnah that taught if someone is not qualified to be a Kohen, like a Yisrael or a woman, if they do receiving of the blood into a vessel, and they have in mind when they're receiving the blood that the Korban will be consumed outside of time, outside of the wrong place, then the Korban does not become Pasul, does not become Pigul, because they're unfit to do that in the first place, and so, therefore their act is considered nothing. Now that blood that they received in that vessel cannot be used, that blood itself. But if there is still life blood that's coming out of the neck of the animal, a proper Kohen can still salvage the Korban. He can go run, get it, do Kabbalah properly, and continue, and then it will be properly done. That was the law of the Mishnah. Now a follow-up question. Be'amine Resh Lakish ben Rabbi Yochanan. Pasul mahu sheyaseh shirayim. Resh Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, what if this pasul person, a Yisrael or woman or slave, what if they sprinkle the blood? Not just Kabbalah, but they sprinkle the blood. And let's say they have proper intention when they're sprinkling the blood. Now, surely that's not a proper sprinkling. It's not going to be a kosher korban through that. The question is not about that. The question is about the rest of the blood that is still in the animal. Is that called shirayim, or can it still be used? Shirayim means a remainder that cannot be used anymore. This applies to a regular korban. A korban, let's say you do everything properly. Kohen does everything with proper intention, does the whole thing. So he goes receive some blood in a vessel, and he takes the blood, he sprinkles some of the blood in the vessel. the rest of the blood that's in the vessel is called shirayim. Cannot be used anymore for zirika. Instead, it's poured on the base of the mizbeach. It still has some special status in that it goes on the base of the mizbeach. But that's it. You did the zirika, good, and now that's called shirayim, although it cannot be used anymore. Any other blood that's still in the animal, still coming out of the animal, that is totally not allowed to be used at all. That gets poured out into the drain in the courtyard, not even put on the mizbeach. So that's the question here. If a pasul person goes ahead and does sprinkling of the blood, okay, well, that's no good. How about the rest of the blood that's still in the animal? So he did zirika, he did it with proper intention. So now, because he did some zirika and he had proper intention, so even though he's pasul, so it's not going to be a good zirika, but is it good enough, sufficient enough that that act will make the rest of the blood shirayim and no longer usable? Or can the Kohen go run and get that blood and still use it? That's the question. And Rabbi Yochanan answers, Amar le, en oseh shirayim ela chus lizmano v'chus limkomo, ho'il umraseh lepigulo. Rabbi Yochanan responds that if this non-Kohen does the sprinkling, then the rest of the blood that's still in the animal is okay to use. A Kohen can go run and get it and do everything properly. It does not become shirayim. Why? Just like something becomes pigul only if you did everything properly, except that you thought of something chutz lizmano. Or if something becomes pasul, if you did everything properly, except that you thought about doing it chutz limkomo. Because in those cases, it's meraseh. It's acceptable in all ways, so that if you had improper intention for Zman, then it would become pigul. That's the law of pigul. The pigul says if you have multiple problems, then it's not going to be pigul, no karet. Only if you have just one problem. Everything else is proper, so that's miratzeh, except that you have improper intention for a time, then and only then it becomes pigul. So just like there, it only becomes pigul if everything else is done properly. So too here, the blood that's still in the animal only becomes shirayim if everything was done properly. A proper Kohen, he does the sprinkling with proper intention, then the rest of the blood that he's holding becomes shirayim, and the rest of the blood that's in the animal becomes unusable for sprinkling anymore. But if it was not done properly, like if a non-Kohen is doing it, so even though the non-Kohen, he's doing the sprinkling, he's doing the proper procedure, but he's not improper person. So therefore, it does not make the rest of the blood to be shirayim, and a Kohen can go ahead and still use it. Rav Zevid matnehachi be'amine Resh Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Zevid says, I have a second version of this question that Resh Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan. This is what he asked. Kos pasul ma'o she'ya'aseh shirayim. Let's say you have a cup of blood that was received. It was received properly by a Kohen, but then it was taken outside of the temple courtyard. Now that blood becomes pasul. So for sure, that blood you cannot use at all. No good. But what about the rest of the blood that's still squirting out of the animal? Does that become shirayim and no good, no longer be usable for zirika, or is it still okay? Rabbi Yochanan says, I have an answer. Amar le, pasul gufe ma'aseh biralach. I pasul mashve shirayim, kos pasul name meshave shirayim. I pasul la meshave shirayim, kos pasul name la meshave shirayim. So Rabbi Yochanan says it depends on what you think about a pasul person sprinkling the blood, which is what we talked about just above. If you think that a pasul person sprinkling the blood makes the rest of it unusable, then the same thing would be if you had this cup of blood that you took outside of the courtyard and brought it back and sprinkled with it. That's the case when you also sprinkled with it. Then if you think the person is no good, makes the rest shirayim, then this blood also will make the rest shirayim. But if you think that a pasul person who sprinkles blood does not disqualify the rest of the blood, but a Kohen can go and get more blood and then save the day, so too this cup of blood that was taken outside and brought back inside and sprinkled, that is no good, but it will not, that it would be the same law. If the person who does, unfit person, does not disqualify the rest of the blood, then also the kos pasul that is sprinkled will not make the rest shirayim, and the kohen can go and get more blood and save the korban. Rav Yirmiyah medifti matne hachi be'amine Abaye me'Rabba kos ma'u she'aseh chavero dachui or shirayim. Rav Yirmiyah from Difti has a different version of the question altogether. It's Abaye who asked Rabbah a question. What if the blood was received in two different vessels? It was done properly. There was a lot of blood. They received in one. Now you have cup A and cup B. Now they take cup A and you sprinkle the blood from cup A onto the mizbeach. Very good. The remainder of the blood in cup A, that will be shirayim, and you pour it down the rest of the down on the base of the mizbeach. Okay, that's easy. That's the normal case. But what about the remainder of the blood that's in cup B? What happens with that? Is it dachui? Is it totally rejected and poured down the drain, just like any blood that's still in the animal is dachui, is rejected and poured down the drain? Or since it's in a holy vessel and you did Kabbalah with it, maybe it has the same status as the remnants of the blood in cup A, which is put on the mizbeach. So all the blood in cup B also. You did Kabbalah, it just wasn't sprinkled, so maybe it has a higher status as shirayim. For sure, you can't use it again. Shirayim means it's leftover. You can't sprinkle it, use it for further sprinkling. But the question is it like the remnant of cup A and shirayim, or is it like the blood that's still in the animal and therefore dachui and put down the drain? And Abba answered, this is dependent on a machloket between the Tanaim, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbanan, the Tanya. In the Braita we learn, Lemala hu omer et damo yishpoch, lemata hu omer ve'et kol dama yishpoch. In Vayikra, chapter 4, that's talking about the various hatat offerings. For the Nasi, it says that he takes the blood and pours it at the base of the altar. That's all the leftover blood, the remnant. But when it talks about the sin offering of an individual, it says, Kol dama. So which one is it? Is it dama or kol dama? So we have to learn something from each pasuk. Minayin lechat shekibel dama ba'arba'a kosot v'natan matana achat mizeh matana achat mizeh shekulan nishpachin layesod Talmud omar ve'et kol dama yishpoch. So now we have Tanakama first, Rabbanan, and they're going to learn something from both Pesukim. So first of all, let's say you have a case where you received blood in 4 different cups, and cup A, B, C, D. And then when you're doing the zirika, you take cup A and you sprinkle it on one corner. And then you take cup B and you use that to sprinkle on the second corner. And so to C and D, you sprinkle from all of them. Therefore, they were all used for sprinkling. So the remnant of all 4 cups is called remnant and therefore is poured onto the base of the mizbeach. Well, that we learned that's true from the word kol dama, all of the blood, even of all 4 cups, as long as you used all 4 cups in zirika. Now, how about if you have 4 cups that you did Kabbalah, but you only sprinkled from one of them? The same one you took and you did all the sprinklings, and the other 3, you did not use. So would you think that all 4 you'd put on the mizbeach, or only one? That's why the first pasuk that says et damo, not all the blood, only some of it. And so we learn from here that you only pour from that 1 cup that you used for sprinkling at the base, and the other 3 cups that you pour down the drain. Hakesad hu nishpach layesod ve'nishpachin la'ama. That 1 cup that you used, you put on the base of the mizbeach, and the other you pour down the drain in the temple courtyard. That is according to Tanakama. So therefore, according to Tanakama, in a similar case, we have 2 cups and you used one and didn't use the other one, so the other one that you didn't use gets poured down the drain. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon omer, minayin lechatat shekibel dama be'arba'a kosot v'natan 4 matanot mikos echad shekolan nishpachin layesod Talmud omar ve'et kol dama yishpoch v'aketiv et damo yishpoch amar Rav Asher hahu lemeut shirayim shebesavar behema. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon uses these pesukim differently, and he says, how do you know that when it comes to a chatat and you receive the blood in 4 different vessels, all received properly, and you only used one of the vessels for the zirika. How do you know that all four still go onto the base of the mizbeach? Because it says the word kol, vet kol dama yishpoch. Okay, what about the other pasuk that says vet damo yishpoch? Rav Ashi says, we learn from here that you do not put on the base of the mizbeach any blood that's still in the throat of the animal. That gets poured down the drain. So that's the distinction, different distinction. And so according to the Rabbi Elazar Shimon, in the case that was asked, when you have two cups and you used one but didn't use the other, both of them get poured on the base of the mizbeach. It's only the blood that was not received into a vessel at all that gets poured down the drain. Kibel hakasher v'natan lapasul. The next part of the Mishnah says that if a kosher kohen received the blood, but then handed the vessel to someone who's pasul, no problem, just hand it back. It doesn't make the korban rejected. You could fix it easily. And then it goes on to say, if the kohen received it in his right hand properly, but then transferred the vessel to his left hand, temporarily not good, but you can fix it. Just put it back in your right hand. And then it says also, if he poured it from the proper vessel into a non-sacred vessel, then just pour it back into the sacred vessel, and you can still save the korban. Usiricha. Why do we need all three? Aren't they basically all the same principle? Why do you have to give three examples? Diashmeinan pasul hava amina my pasul tameh techazil avodat sibur aval simol lo. Because if it only told me regarding the pasul, the unfit kohen, I might think, oh, you know what it's talking about? It's talking about someone who's tameh, even a kohen who is tameh, because a kohen who's tameh does have the possibility in some cases of serving in a proper way. For example, if everybody is tameh, if all the kohanim are tameh, then they can serve while they're tameh. So since a tameh kohen has some possibility of being okay in some circumstances, maybe that's why the korban doesn't become pasul altogether, but you can go and fix it. But if it was another case, like if you put it in his left hand, a left hand is never okay to use for a temple service. So I might think that would make it pasul altogether, and you couldn't fix it. So that's why I need the case of simol. And if you only told me the case of where he transfers to a left hand, I would say, oh, there he can fix it and put it back in his right hand, because there is a case where the left hand is used for avodah, and that's the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, where he has to carry two things. He has to carry the coals in his right hand and the spoon of incense with his left hand when he goes into Kodesh Kodashim. So there, you see the left hand is somewhat used. Maybe that's why it doesn't make the Korban Pasul and he can fix it. But a non-sacred vessel can never be used. And so maybe a transfer to the non-sacred vessel would make the blood altogether no good and not usable anymore. So that's why I need the non-kosher, the non-unfit vessel to teach me that. Also, that's okay. But now let's only teach me that case. That if you put it into a non-kosher vessel, then you can still transfer it back. And if I know that case, then all the more so the others. No, because you might say in the regular vessel that's not consecrated, there even though you put the blood in there, you can transfer it back and still save the korban, because the non-fit vessel can always be consecrated. It can always change and become consecrated easily. And so that's why it's somewhat okay. That's why it doesn't make the blood totally pasul. But with the other things, a left hand or an invalid person, those can never be consecrated and used. So I might think that they make them altogether bad. That's why I need all three cases. I could not learn one from the other. In all these cases, even though the blood was put in that situation temporarily, you can just put it back in the proper situation and continue. Now the question is, how come we don't say the blood is rejected when you put it in one of these things? Unfit person, left hand, non-sacred vessel. We're questioning the halacha itself of the Mishnah. Why not say it's no good altogether? Amar le Ravina Rav Ashi, hachi kamar Rav Yirmiyah midifti mishmed Rava. Hamaneh Hanana Misrihu delet le dichuyin. Ravina tells Rav Ashi, this is what I heard from Rav Yirmiyah midifti in the name of Rava, that the author of this part of the Baraita is Hanan the Egyptian, because he does not have the whole law of rejection. Even in other cases, the Tanya, Tanya. Chanan Misri Omer, Afilu dam bakos, mebi chavero umzaveg lo. Chanan Misri said, even regarding the blood in the other vessel. We're talking about a case here on Yom Kippur. Let's say you have two seirim, and one, you did the lottery, one is for Hashem, and one is going to be a Sa'ir La'azazel. Now, what if the Sa'ir La'azazel was lost? We don't know where it is. So now you might say, since that is lost, so too the other korban, the korban is Hashem. Let's say you did shechita already and you received the blood. Okay, he's holding the blood here. He has it here. Is it okay to use? Most people would say, no. If you lost the counterpart, then this blood is also dahui. It's rejected. It's no good. You have to get another pair of animals and do the whole thing all over again. That's what other sages would say. But not Chanan HaMitzri. He says, even though you have the blood in the cup, and the other seir that's supposed to be Lazazel is lost, no problem. Just bring another sa'ir, and that you'll pair it up. And so now you have a new sa'ir that will go Lazazel, and no need to bring a new sa'ir to be Hashem. You could still use that blood. In other words, we don't say the concept of of it being rejected. So too here, just because you took the blood and you put it in the left hand, no, there's no such thing as rejected. It's still okay. So that's the author. Rav Asher Amar, Kol shebiado lahaveh dachui. But another answer is, no, we don't have to be the minority opinion of Chanan Mitzri. It could be that over here, it's okay because anytime it's in the Kohen's power to fix it. He could just fix it easily. He just goes and takes the other blood. He takes the blood in the left hand. He puts it in the right hand. It's in his power to rectify it. We don't say it's rejected. It's only rejected if it's a situation where the Kohen does not have the power to fix it. Like in the case of one of the pairs of the Seirim gets lost. Then he can't go find it. Nobody knows where it is. And there you'd say it's rejected. But as long as he can fix it, then it's not rejected. And that's the case that is the case in all three situations that the Mishnah brings. Rav Shaya says, I agree with Rav Asher's answer that this can follow, doesn't have to follow Chanan Misri, can follow the other sages, and anything that the Kohen is in power to fix does not become rejected. After all, we say, who is of the opinion that there is such a thing as things being rejected? Rabbi Yehuda says that. Ditnan. Ve'od amar Rabbi Yehuda nishpach adam yamut ha'mishtalech. Met ha'mishtalech yishafech adam. Rabbi Yochanan says in the Mishnah Masechet Yoma regarding the two seirim on Yom Kippur. Let's say you have two seirim and one is going to be LaHashem. You did the slaughtering, you received the blood, but then the blood got spilled out. And so now, what are you going to do? Well, because you can't use that one, that was for Hashem, this counterpart also you cannot use to send out to the cliff. Rather, that one has to be left to die, and you have to get a new pair and start the whole thing again. And the same thing the other way around. If you had a pair and the sa'ir that you designated for sending to the desert died. Now it's going to die anyway because you're going to throw it off the cliff, but it died prematurely. Before you sent it off the cliff. So now the other korban that was for Hashem, which you slaughtered already, and you have the blood there. That blood, throw it out, spill it out, and you have to go and get two new korbanot, two new seirim, and start all over again. That's the Yehuda. So we see that according to the Yehuda, he does have the concept of something that's dahui. And yet, even he says that's not true in all cases. He also says that as long as it's in the power of the Kohen to rectify, it's not going to be rejected. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, kos echad hayam male midam hatarobet, vezorko zerika achat keneged hayesod, shema'mina kol shebiado lahaveh dichui shema'mina. The Baraita teaches, according to the Yehuda, on Pesach, when you have many offerings, everybody's bringing their Korban Pesach. How many thousands of them are there? It's easy for a Kohen to make a mistake, and they have an assembly line, and they're taking all the blood, they're receiving the blood, and they're sending it to the mizbeach to be sprinkled. But it's possible that sometimes someone might spill some of the blood, and then poor guy that offered that offering, his offering is no good, and that whole group is not going to be good. So Rabbi Yehuda says, listen, I have a fix. Here's what you should do. Take 1 cup from all the blood that's mixed on the floor of the Mizbeach. And take a cup, it's all mixed up, and take that cup, gather some of that blood together, and sprinkle it on the Mizbeach. And that way, it will rectify in case anybody spilled, the spilling will be mixed up with some of that blood, and now you sprinkle it, and that will fix any problem. What do we see? That Rabbi Yehuda says that as long as it's in your power to fix something, even though it fell on the floor, okay, pick it up, and then go and do it again. And he would, in fact, do this advocate for doing this for Korban Pesach. So we see that, in fact, Rabbi Yehuda would fit with Rav Asher's answer, because Rav Asher said, as long as you can fix it, then it's not rejected. And Rabbi Yochanan, who says, in general, things are rejected, like if you can't do anything about it, like if one of the Seidim gets lost, but yet he says that if it can be rectified by the Kohen, then it is not rejected, and so he could be the author of our Mishnah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.